Good evening, everyone. Um, This is the Financial Town Hall meeting. It is November 20th, 2025. I am Darren Morton, the City Comptroller. And so we're going to proceed with this town hall. And then I'm going to make the presentation and go over several topics. And then at the end, give you opportunity for you to be able to ask whatever questions that you desire to ask. The only thing that I do ask is that we ask the questions and we have constructive and respectful dialogue. And I will promise I will answer every question that you may have. And if there are things that I do not have an answer for, I will make sure that myself or one of the staff members get your information and be able to answer whatever questions that you have proposed. So did you get the latest presentation? Okay. So let's uh, okay. So let's begin. And then this presentation also will be available on the web for anyone who wishes to download the web. I always want to try to start off with kind of where we were, at least at the time in which I took over as City Comptroller. So really quickly, what we want to do is make sure we outline that we were 5 years behind in our audits, approaching 6 years. We were also 5 years behind in what was considered to be the AFR that now, well, at the time was the AUD, now is the AFR, with the New York State Comptroller's Office. We had two audits that had been issued by the New York State Comptroller's Office for the city of Mount Vernon. We had also lost our credit rating in January of 2019. The accounting data, once I got into the office, as had been reported before, there was a lot of missing accounting information, inaccuracies in several of the systems, inclusive of our financial software system and also our tax collection system. They were missing book entries for revenues and for expenditures from 18 to 21. We also had about $61 million worth of debt outstanding liabilities that included that of also half of a year to 2021's health insurance to the state, as well as vendor, over $10 million worth of vendor and legal liabilities. And then also we had a pending right before us, a $14 million bill for the retirement. In addition to that, there were other also liabilities too. We also uncovered that there were about $58 million worth of outstanding taxes. And in addition to that, also $11.7 million tax liability to the school district. All right. Strategy for moving forward was first of all to create a financial infrastructure that would allow us to be able to clean up that which was deficient, and then also to be able to also manage the day-to-day operation going forward. So we did also engage external consultants. We have two accountants who are also working with us, one of which is a CPA, who's working primarily to make sure that we are completing all that we need in order to get the audits done, while also the internal staff is providing support to that, while also managing the day-to-day financial operation. The goal was, of course, to maintain the current financial operation for the city. As I said, internal staff was doing the actual day-to-day operation work, as well as we're working with those external auditors and external accountants and auditors to complete the audits that had not been done. The also goal was to establish a new financial infrastructure, assign staff to begin to look at the policies and procedures in the department. We also contracted an outside contractor to actually come in and do an assessment and provide a report to us about the policies and procedures, as well as to begin the process, investigate where we are with our credit rating, and to be able to try to get to a place where we could file for the bond rating back. What have we done? Well, we have completed and submitted and completed 5 annual audits. We are now up to 2021, which is anticipated to be completed in December of this year or early January. Then we will move quickly into 2022 and 2023. The goal is to complete it by mid-2026, those two, and also to be completely up to date by the end of 2026, so that we can begin to then fill out the application for us to get our credit rating returned. We've also provided clear communication to the public about the financial information of the city on a regular basis. We've been compliant with the charter requirements of having quarterly reports get out, as the quarters complete. I've done several of these annual updates to the public as well as some videos and other communications. We also have created some policies and procedures as well. So we've adopted a few of those policies that have been sent up to the city council. We have a cash management policy, a debt management policy, a fund balance policy. We have travel, and we have a credit card, corporate credit card policy. We also have some departmental procedures, financial procedures that have been established. And as we continue to work on them, they will be also be elevated at some point to a complete financial policy, manual that will be issued out. Those include the use of Easy Pass, because prior to that, we were getting a number of bills for city-owned vehicles going through tolls and not paying, and we end up paying also penalties and fees in addition to that. So we also established a Easy Pass program with also policies for that. Journal entries, vehicle use, as well as wire payments procedures, because as you remember, the state comptroller also cited us for not having the proper sign-offs for those things. As well as workers' compensation procedures for how people go out on workers' compensation, how they report it, and how we also regulate the payments. Enhance the financial reporting and compliance. I've already talked about that, the 13 quarterly reports that have been issued out. In fact, this last quarter's report is being released actually tomorrow. We just completed compiling all of that together today. So that's the period ending September 30th. And also digital timekeeping system. We do have our Chrono system. We have also added some additional features to that, which also allow for telestaff, particularly with our police officers and our firefighters, and those that kind of work in stations that are remote, so we can begin to track better the time in which they are actually working, which they are not. So those are the things that we have done. So in addition to that, as you know, we've had a $58 million kind of debt, outstanding tax arrears that we needed to try to go after. It took us quite a bit of time to be able to get to that stage, because as I stated to you before, the tax records were not in perfect shape, and you will probably find that there are some property owners who had complained in the beginning of my administration about having to come in, give us copies of their canceled checks and all those things, because we found, once we send out arrears notices, that there were individuals who had actually paid, but it had not been actually recorded in the system itself. And so we had to do some kind of some review and auditing of that as well, to make sure that we did not have any missing money as a part of that. But even it was really horrific to even find in one of the boxes a few $1,000s in cash attached to a deposit slip. And we were able to at least post that to the proper property owner, but things of that sort. So having said that, we then looked at ways in which we could deal with the tax issue. And so, yeah, it took us a long time to get to a place of tax liens. Took us a long time to get to a place of in rem. But please note that also that we had not done an in rem since 2014. I came in 2022. So almost a whole decade had gone by where there had not actually been an in rem foreclosure proceeding. But the records were not in very good shape. So according to the law, I have to be able to certify that the information is correct. So it took a long time for us to get to that point. And then also looking at the city charter, there were some real restrictions around how tax liens are to be done. The city had never done a tax lien sale. They had always done just in rem foreclosures. And so for the first time, as far as I know, in modern, at least, history of the city, we finally did a tax lien sale. We started off in June. And in June, we conducted the first one. September was the second. The third one is scheduled for December 16th, which will exhaust the list of the 2024 tax liens. And then, of course, what will happen is that there will be a 2025 tax lien list that will then come out in accordance with the charter, which says that it has to be done prior to, of course, the fourth Tuesday in June. And so we'll begin to work on that as well. What did we yield from these tax lien sales? We generated about $1.7 million of tax payments from the two tax liens. And the way that the tax lien sale works is, again, it's not purchasing of the property, it's purchasing of the tax lien. We do not bid the tax lien amount. We bid, what they bid on is the actual interest. And the law says that the maximum is 10%. In which they 10% interest, and then we go down, and whoever bids on the lowest amount of interest then wins the actual bid for the tax lien sale. The advantage to the property owner is that if we keep the tax lien, it's running for the city, it's running at an 18% tax interest. 18% interest on an annual. For the school taxes, it is a 12% interest. So from the standpoint of interest, the property owner actually has some advantage with the tax lien. However, they do have a maximum of 3 years to pay off the tax lien. But during the 3 years, they are technically only minimally required to pay off the interest. They can default on that by the conditions of the law. So about $1.7 million of tax lien receipts. The third one is scheduled for December. You will notice also from the display that we basically, between the two, we sold about 91 tax liens. We also have about 92 tax liens that now have been turned over to in rem. We started already on the June. So what happens is that if the tax lien is not sold, we then move it to in rem, which is a foreclosure. We have right now our attorneys that are working on the actual uh, deed, doing the searches for identifying who may have an interest in the property, because by law, we have to notify everybody who potentially has an interest in it. And so once we get all of that done, we will then publish the official list of those that are in the in-rem foreclosure process as is required again by law. So then, in addition to tax liens, what we also did is we also did tax interest amnesty, not on the taxes themselves, but on the interest and the penalties. And when you look at what we yielded from that, about $2.1 million came in payments of receipts from the tax lien amnesty program itself. Of that, $819,000 is residential, and commercial, $1.3 million. The waiving of the interest and the penalties, there was about $536,000 for residential that was waived, and then also about $405,000 for commercial, a total of $941,000 that actually was waived as a part of those processes. Okay. As I said to you, also, we have just completed the third quarter report. It will be published tomorrow and available to the public. But general high level, number of receipts, amount of receipts for up to the period ending on September 30th, 119,542, almost $43,000 in receipts. Of that was about 71,000, almost close to $72,000, 72 million, I'm sorry, $72 million in property tax. So 119,542 in receipts, and of that, $72 million in property tax. Expenditures was about 112, or almost $112.5 million in expenditures. And the high level, the key categories, of course, was about $50 million in salaries and wages. The health and dental costs, about 18 million, little 18.3, and then the retirement, 15.1, overtime, about 5 million, 5,100,000. Let's talk about the city fund balance, because there's been a lot of discussion around the city's fund balance. We have completed, as I stated before, the audits up to 2020. And in those reports, it also gives us what the fund balances were at the beginning of those years, as well as at the end of those years. This graph that is being shown shows the continued decline in our fund balance. In 2016, started the year off with $19.2 million in the fund balance. By the end of that year, we were at 15.1. And so we started off the following year at 15.1, and then by the close of by the close of 2017, we were at 10.7 again, which which again is a negative loss of significantly of about 4 million, a little bit over $4 million. Then at the close of 18, we were at a negative 4.4. by the close of 18. And at the close, as we look at 19, beginning off at 19 with a negative fund balance, we then continued in 19. And in 19, at the end of 19, it was a negative 15 million, all right, in the fund balance. And then in 2020, which as you all know, also is the COVID year, there was also a decrease as well of about $13 million, which then put us at a negative 28 million. As of date, that's where we are as it pertains to knowing what the fund balance is. We are still, as you know, we're working on the audits and we're working on all of the financials. And so we cannot give you an actual accurate account of where we are today with the fund balance. But again, we balance the fact that we have this negative fund balance, and we also have these tax arrears that are out. The hope, desire, and all of the efforts is that we will rebuild our fund balance by one, also the city doing a proper management of the existing budgets, and the city also recouping collecting the money that actually is out there in taxes that is owed. So, having said that, with no real available fund balance, and also having needs for the city itself as it pertains to even capital, and also obligations related to even contracts of staffing, we had to also figure out how we are going to fund for some of these things. So there's been some questions around the bond anticipation notes and why the bond anticipation notes. One is because the city doesn't have a bond rating, and two, also does not have a fund balance. We have, at least by reports and by our communication with the debt market, to been able to at least yield the ability to do bond anticipation notes. These things have also addressed some of our immediate capital needs, such as some of the infrastructure things that needed to be done throughout the city, and that was about $3.2 million. And then, of course, the 6 years of contracts that had not been settled for 3 unions. And if you remember that there was an agreement with the fire union underneath of the administration of Mayor Richard Thomas, that also yielded 14% to them for a 4-year period, in which we also went to arbitration on and got a PERB decision that required us to pay it, or if not in a timely fashion, that we would also have to pay about the statutory 9% interest on that. So we did also work out a plan with them to pay it over a period of time, but that did have an impact upon the actual ongoing operation budget. Subsequent to that, we also had to then deal with settling the contracts for the other 3 unions: Police Benevolent Association, the Civil Service Employees Association, CSEA, and also the Local 456 Teamsters. In negotiating with them, we negotiated a 14% over a 6-year period with them. But what that yielded for the city was also $15.8 million in retro pay that had to be paid. We tried to negotiate with the unions on how to pay it out. The unions were not inclined to allow us to pay it out over the course of several years, similar to even what we did with the fire was really only a year and a half of paying it out. If we then even settled with them to pay it out in 2 years, it means that we would have to divide up $15.8 million into 2 years. Translation, that would be point on the taxes is $700,000. So even if we did it in 2 years, it would have translated to about a 10% increase on the taxes in 2024. If we did it in one year, of course, it would have been close to about a 19% increase. So one of the ways, and after talking to our bond counsels on it, that we then identified to pay for it, of course, was through bond anticipation notes. However, what that does is it spreads out the cost of it. It means that we're actually, in the long run, paying more for it, but the impact to the tax rate immediately is not as significant. The goal, however, is, because it is bond anticipation notes, is of course to renew it up to the 5 years and hopefully not have to do it 5 years if we can get these audits done, and then get bonds and then convert them to bonds, so that also the interest rate would be lower and the payout would be over a longer period of time. That's the strategy as it pertains to that. But unfortunately, because those contracts had not been done for 6 years and needed to be negotiated, we have found ourselves in this financial situation, which is why I've been working with the unions and the mayor to try to get the current contracts that they have that are outdated settled sooner. Because if we continue to kick this down the road, we're only going to actually exacerbate the financial stress that the city is absolutely under right now. That's the bond anticipation notes. I've already talked about the next slide about the impact of what had happened with the $15.8 million bond, because I know that there was a lot of discussion around it, and that there were people who thought that I probably should not have asked for the issuance of it. But to be honest, I do believe that that was the best option for us at the time, for us to be able to kind of move forward and not to find ourselves in a situation where we would be again in arbitration, again in PERB, having to pay additional interest on already a debt that would cause more harm to us. But we have kind of moved forward. So then the next thing is TANs. What's happening on to the city day to day and its financial operation? We can go to the next slide. Last year, we had to do a TAN for $6.5 million. Because again, last year, the cash for the first time, at least with during my time, we had a cash flow challenge. And a lot of that is because also we did have some ARPA money that also was helping for earlier years. ARPA money started to come to an end last year. And even the ways in which the ARPA money actually is allocated also create some challenges, because when you allocate the ARPA money for positions, which they allow you to do, it also just kicks the can down the road, because eventually those positions have to come off of the ARP money and come back onto the budget. So last year we had this TAN that we had to issue out, and the TAN is for us to borrow against our anticipated taxes that will come. And it is something that is typically used in municipal financing when there is a cash flow issue and you anticipate that there's money that is going to come in. We anticipate, of course, that whatever gap we have in our collection rate, which right now has been roughly around about 96%. So it's really only about 4% of the taxpayers that are not paying the taxes currently in the year in which they need to be paid. But we also have, again, that, now I think it's somewhere around about $43 million or whatever it is of taxes that are still now out. So it allows us to borrow against that. It is short term, so therefore it has to be paid within that year. So the $6.5 million TAN, the maturity and the payment of it is happening in December. Its due date, I think, is December 26th. Somewhere around about that. So we will be paying that. We have included that also in our cash flow projections and estimates for 2025. But having said that, we also know Can we go to the next? Why do we need it? Right? When we look at 2025, again, as I said to you, we have no fund balance. We also have slow pays on taxes. We have periodic times within the year in which money comes in. And so there's these ebbs and flows that happen in the cash flow on that. But also, there are also some grants and, that we also get as a city that require us to do advance payments. And so when we look at what we've been paying as it pertains to old debts as well as grants and also the ebb and flow of receipts and expenditures, we had about $3.9 million in old school taxes that we paid this year, right? We probably collected about 1.2 of those particular taxes in. We also had to pay a $1.6 million additional payment for our health, that was not paid again in 2021. So we're paying our health premium every month plus $209,000 to pay down the debt, part of the agreement. Additionally, we also have agreement with IRS for a outstanding employee salary issue from 2019 related to Lodi payments that actually did not get properly reported to them in 2019. That is about $1.7 million. All right. As well as advance payments for construction projects, right? Or for capital projects. Some of it related to sewer, but sewer has a different funding where there actually is also this credit line that's coming from the state to advance us the money. So for some things of sewer, it's not everything in sewer that has this issue, because some of it we actually are getting money where we can get it from our credit line, pay it, and then get the money reimbursed from the state and then pay back the credit line for that. But there's other things like paving. So for example, when paving is done, it's under CHIPS money that comes from the state. The city has to pay for it. You may have heard in one of the last Board of Estimates meetings when I asked the question about funding around a payment that came to us for a special meeting. It was given to us, it was given to my office on a Friday saying that there was a deadline to pay to get it to the state in order for us to get a reimbursement back quickly. Otherwise, the reimbursement would not have come back until May or April or May. So the special meeting, my question was around whether or not that now payment and when the actual reimbursement was coming back was included in the cash flow documents for this year. Because if not, then our projection to our bond counsel, to our financial advisors around our cash flow would be inaccurate. In addition to any other charges that end up coming into the city, that we have no knowledge of, which is why we also asked all of the departments to curtail their spending. We started noticing departments earlier on in the year about what was happening with the cash flow and changing the way in which their spending habits actually was administered. So several departments also experienced a decline in revenue, in addition to the fact that we also as a city also experienced decline in our own sales tax revenue over the last several months. If you even went to the state comptroller's office, you will be able to see that decline itself. And so even still with the with the amnesty program bringing in some money, yielding the amount that it did, and also the tax liens sales yielding the 1.7. There again, with all of those payments that also are not budgeted, all right, but have to be advance paid, and then we have to get them back. Not only about state grants, but there are also some federal grants that also require for us. If you go back and look again at any of the board estimates, you'll often find me asking the question around whether this is reimbursable if this is an advance payment or not, because those are questions that help to try to manage as best as possible the cash flow. So we projected that there was going to be a shortfall, and the shortfall is going to be somewhere around about $7 million in December. That's why I then asked for the council to approve TAN for this year. Moving on to the budget of 2026, from the perspective of the Comptroller's office, right? Well, one, the budget was presented to the Board of Estimates at a 6.09%. This week it is out now. The hearing on that is December 1st. You'll also notice that the budget basically includes about 85% of the budget is staff related, right? I think in Mayor's presentation, it said that basically it was 88%. Again, that fluctuates based upon the number of FTEs, people that we have. But nevertheless, that's a high number, right? And so therefore, with that number, it means that there's a shrinking operation portion of the budget to be able to cut from. So any significance of reductions there is not going to get us to a place of significant reduction in the tax rate itself. My office, again, has provided the mayor's office and the staff with the mandatory expenditures that relate to the city operation, such as retirement costs. Our retirement costs jumped $3 million this year, from last year to this year. Why? We settled the 3 union agreements for 6 years. Again, I'll go say it again, right? That's the reason why having contracts delayed for significant periods of time, and of course, not having a fund balance to be able to put designated money in the fund balance for those things, causes more financial stress upon the city and has a ripple effect. Typically, what would have happened is that our retirement costs would have incrementally increased over those 6 years. But because they did not, once that was now settled, then with the payments that had to be made to them, again, it also affected the retirement costs that went up. Now, of course, good thing is that next year, that cost should go down because you don't have the same significant jump that we had from 24 to 25, 25 to 26. All right. Then you got the health insurance. We kept the health insurance flat in the proposed budget because anticipating that, one, there were some positions that were taken out. Two, I also introduced also for some share pay in premiums from the appointed and elected, and also began to have conversations with unions that are not paying in to it about the possibility of that. Right now, fire and police are the ones that are actually paying into health. They're not being paid into by CSCA or Local 456 or the unrepresented, which is the appointed and the elected. At least in even my conversations with the mayor and the council, we talked about at least starting with the unrepresented and then trying to negotiate with the other unions. Just simply, health cost is astronomical. It just has risen, right? And so we're going to have to watch that number very closely. And then, of course, the debt service increase, which I have already talked to you about as it pertains to, one, the bands. Now, there were 3 different bands. It was, of course, the 15.8, which is related to, again, the contracts. There's also the 3.2 that was related to general capital infrastructure stuff. And then there also was the financing for the equipment that was needed also in the Department of Public Works. We also as a part of the budget process, my office also provided multi-year trending around the revenues. Um, Looking at that, as a result of that, our recommendations was the reduction in the revenue line related to inspections, to some building department fees, to the red light camera. The red light camera had been a part of the budget for the last 2 years with the anticipation that the contract would have been signed and that the legislation would have been passed. And because it had not, at that point in time, it was like, we can't continue to put this in the budget if it is not going, is not a reality. To it, the contract has been signed now, so we did put at least some revenue in there. We don't have to see how that goes, see if it actually helps. We also learned in the last few days that the governor has signed the speed cameras as well, so that also will also help. Again, sale of real property. For the last 2 years, the Y, or former Y, was included in the budget as being a property that would be sold. And that did not happen. And so again, the recommendation was that that needed to be removed because we don't know what the status of that project is. All right. Moving on. The 2026 budget. We also expressed our concerns, as you said, when we looked at the budget around other areas of revenue that also was trending downward. Sales and use tax, as I stated earlier. Also, sewer rents, fees. Sewer rent fees is also collected as a part of also the water fees, but also in the reporting of those. We have not been able to reconcile the difference in the years because we're collecting multiple years. And so for me, that data itself, we needed to make sure that we were able to capture what actually is being collected and what is not. Ultimately, what we're going to have to do, of course, because that also becomes lien for anybody who has not paid them, is begin to work on that system as well as how we capture that. Refuge fees. Remember, the goal of both of these initiatives was also to be able to supplement the operation, but also to be able to make sure that there was money available for the capital needs related to those things. And so while there is a calculation that happens with both of those fees that may bring in a certain amount of money, let's just say it's $8 million, you don't want to put $8 million in the operating budget because you want to be able to put some money into the capital budget for if some equipment goes down, if you need a new garbage truck, if you're whatever those things are. And so we work with the administration to come up with the proportionment that needs to be put in the budget versus that which needs to be also put into the capital enterprise fund for that. Building alterations fees was also a concern for us because, again, sometimes you have these big projects in some years and other years you don't. And so looking at the actual revenues for the last several years, right? Also keeping in mind that COVID was in the middle of those, if I'm looking at across 7 years, to try to come up with a appropriate amount that makes sense, that creates the stability. The state comptroller's office cited us for putting in revenues that are one-time revenues, right? And also making sure that our revenues were not inflated. And so the objective, again, by making the recommendations that there should be some changes and adjustments and reduction in some areas, is to make sure that we have much more kind of a streamlined and realistic kind of projection. Parking, same issue. Now, there were some things that also came up as a part of that process. In that one, that there's going to be some changes in operation, or at least the mayor's office is anticipating that there's going to be some changes there to implement some changes, especially even with parking. The mayor has proposed that there be a change in how they adjudicate the parking, right? Because according to the anecdotal information, I'm waiting to get actually the actual imperial data. On it. But according to the anecdotal information is that we are writing about $6 million worth of tickets, but yet only about 3 million or half of that is actually being actually realized because tickets are being thrown out, tickets are being reduced. There's a lot that's going on there. So that operation seemingly is going to change. But we've cautioned as the finance office around the vulnerability of that, the vitality of that, right? And that means that, again, it's going to call for very strict management, right, of the administration of the departments and also strict regulation by my office on that. So we're going to probably be doing a little bit more internal auditing that is going to kind of be needed for that. We did a internal review of a process last year, which was the building department, which is why now the payments are coming down to our office as opposed to going to the building department if they go in-house, because we want to make sure that we had better handle over the internal controls around that. So these are revenues will require, again, careful monitoring by the administration to avoid any additional cash flow issues with the constraints on the staffing, maintaining optimal services and all of that. We understood that it caused for some real careful review of the budget itself. And I will say this, right? The charter required that the departments give to the mayor their estimates, which they did in August or August. So when that was submitted, that estimate came back, it was 18%. And so between that time and this time, my office, the mayor, and the council have been working and looking at the budget and massaging the budget to get it to kind of where it is, right? And I have been up and late nights, and some people who have emailed me at 2:00 in the morning and get a response can testify, right? Vince Ferradino can testify that I respond at 2:00 in the morning because I'm up working. And I'm trying to figure out exactly, we're trying to figure out exactly what we could do and what we could offer from my office around trying to make sure that we had the best possible budget to kind of move forward. So that's the best. That's what I have to offer today on that. I know that the public hearing on this is on December 1st. And so I just wanted to at least give you the highlights from the office of the Comptroller and the respective. Questions are gonna be at the end. All right. So having said that, moving forward, what also did I do? A few weeks ago, I asked also the council to give permission for us to begin to work on a multi-year financial plan, an operation plan. We have done that process. We've already started interviewing. We are doing that with our financial advisors, are working alongside with us. We've completed, with 12 interviews with 12 departments to kind of get a better understanding of the day-to-day operation, prepared kind of this baseline kind of financial model that we're working on and scenarios on it. All of this, again, is in works, is in draft form, so it's not foilable because we're still working on this, on the works. We don't have any documents whatsoever. So I want to make sure I make that clear. We are also evaluating the financial and operational impacts of possible kind of initiatives, finalizing kind of projections on that, and then doing estimated completion of this is kind of late December, which is then we will then present that, of course, to the mayor and to the city council for their review and for also some input. Long-term objectives, to work with, of course, the city officials to prioritize and implement the plan once it is complete. The second thing that also I asked to do is because, again, recognizing that, again, 88% of our budget is related to staff and employees, looking at, is there some possibility for some retirement incentives? Is a program for that to help to try to lower kind of the cost. So we're working on that. It's ongoing at this point. We actually are asking for information about years of service from the New York State Retirement Office, so we have the right data to be able to kind of work on that. So tonight's meeting was, again, because every year around about this time, I try to do a meeting, again, to give you an update of where we are. If you go back and look at all of the quarterly reports, you will see that the information, one, is transparent, two, that there have been some warnings and some concerns that have been laid out, as well as also you will see that there's been some periods in which we actually have been ahead of the budget. But when you look at it as a whole, you really will see that the expenditures for the actual year have not been out of whack based upon what has been budgeted. The revenues, however, have been actually, the revenues itself have actually been the thing that has really driven a major gap in it, coupled with the need for us to have to actually do advance payments that are not within the budget, have not been budgeted, but are things from previous years. And I want to say this again, right? I am the city's comptroller, and what I attempt to try to do is not to try to cast the blame off on anyone, even previous administrations, but provide you with the facts of what it is that we are dealing with right now. We have made some major headways in moving forward. However, this ship is not going to be turned around overnight, but it is going to require really deliberate planning, right? Very tight management, right, of it, and aggressive outreach for those things that we now are owed back to us, such as taxes and the coordination of those efforts. The internal operations of the office consist of competent financial professionals. We have accountants that are working every day, in fact, overtime because of the catch-up. We have external also accountants that are also helping us to make sure that we catch up as swiftly, but also that we establish the financial base and the financial infrastructure for the future as we kind of move forward. So that is my formal presentation today, with the exclusion of one last item, right, which is where the official statement is going to come out shortly on this. So there also has been a conversation around and concern around the $400,000 wire fraud. So in January 7th, when this occurred, immediately there was a statement that was issued out from my office to the public. In fact, the statement was issued out to the public even before we even completed the police report itself, so that the public was aware of what had occurred. What I also did is we also engaged the FBI, their wire fraud unit on it, in which they assigned it to one of the agents whom I had been working with for several months on this, and they also had been doing outreach and recapturing on whatever monies they could try to recapture or freeze, because you know how this goes. They begin to now hop the money from one to the other. Once they completed everything that they could potentially do with it, they've been turned it over to the Westchester DA's office for them to do any additional kind of criminal, actions on it as well. We have not had actually had any findings that have come from the DA's office or even the police department on the matter, whatever their work has been kind of on this. In addition to that, what we have done is we've been able to recapture we've been able to capture some of the funds that we have. So we right now have been able to recapture about $162,000 through the snatch back, right? Back in. And we also have received from our cyber insurance that we also had, because I also took out cyber insurance the first year that I was here because we had not had one before. We also recaptured about $186,000. And so it comes down to that the loss, the base loss down to the city on that is $74,000. But the official letter communication around this will come out from our office once I also have a final conversation with the Westchester DA's office on this. So having said that, I will close my official presentation and now take any of the questions that you all may have. Come up, you just got to the mic. I think you got to press it and then just
Thanks. I'm David Reich, 112 Ridgeway in Mount Vernon. Thank you for the presentation. I do appreciate all the many hours and going above and beyond in terms of how hard you work on this. And I know you got a tough job. We have a lot of catching up to do. I know you say you don't want to put blame on others, and I respect that, but there have been problems over the years. I know you have a tough job. But I just have one question and then just a couple of quick comments or suggestions. How does it, so you're talking about a 6 point something tax increase, but I thought there's a mandated cap of 2%. So how does that work? Please explain.
well, the city council will have to then vote to override the 2% tax cap. That's the process in which they would have to then do and send off to the state.
But if it's mandate, and so then it's up to the state to accept it, I mean, what happens? So the city council overrides it, saying the heck with us taxpayers, and the state just accepts it, or I'm sorry to be ignorant, but I just don't know.
I would not be able to answer that legal question for you, unfortunately. So I would suggest that you probably have to come to the city council and ask them about that, or, legally.
And
but
they
I don't
sit
know.
there and basically ignore whatever we suggest to them or ask, but that's another issue. Looking at these numbers, it's very scary. And I see, it looks like a city that's on the verge of bankruptcy or about to fail. And aside from trying to bring in bits and pieces from trying to collect taxes that are due us, that are due the city, trying to get proper fees from the buildings department or other things like that. What about cutting staff? I mean, there are certain essential services you can't touch the police, can't touch the fire department, DPW. Those are, as far as I'm concerned, essential. But there are a lot of people here in City Hall. I don't know what jobs every single person does. And I hate to talk about, these are people's livelihoods. I get it. But we're really in distress here financially. So we may have to make some really tough decisions and just do a lot of trimming and get by with what we can get by with. Another thing is our leaders, the mayor, the city council, department heads, there should be a total stop on all travel. Okay? For the mayor to go to Brazil, and I know she wants to be represented and she wants to learn from others, but it could be done by webinars, by online, rather than traveling and having food and travel and lodging. Also, if we just have to forego these things for a year or two or three, cut all travel, that can save us a chunk of money. I don't have exact numbers. I haven't really examined the budget that closely, but that can save. So things like that, instead of looking at where can we squeeze a little out from um, selling some properties or collecting back taxes, those are some things that I think really need to be done, and we should look at that and come in with a proposal that's closer to the 2% tax cap.
No problem.
So,
Thank you, sir.
okay,
No, I hear you. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
And
okay.
I think that we are looking, we have been and we are looking at these to staff reductions around that, right? I mean, there are, I think, 34 positions that actually was taken out of this particular one. But I hear you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Good evening, Mr. Controller.
Good
Good to
evening.
see you again. I know we spoke last night. But I'm here today because I looked through the budget, I looked through other things, but I want to make sure, because, I did win to be the next city councilman. I will be sworn in January, right? But I want to make sure that you guys all know that I'm here to give the hard questions. I'm not here to be comfortable with anybody. We spoke about the audits. We always speak about it because when you put them out, I'm one of the first people to read them and get back to you on that particular thing. I wanted to be here because I want to make sure people know how bad we are in financial situation. We are currently $260 million in current debt. You know that. And $414 million in long-term liability. That's putting us at about $600 million in debt that we're going to have to pay. My projections were correct the last time when we put out this 2019 audit and the other audits, and I told you we would be at 400 million. I was off by 14 million. I'm looking at our outgoing constantly of where we're going to be at by the time we hit 2025, and we're going to be close to $1 billion as a small city to be owing that type of money. I went through this budget, I analyzed this, I look at this in sense, and I see that we've been raising the taxes in the 23, it was 5.6, then 7.7 and 7.7. Now we're talking about 6.9. However, each time we do the projections on revenue increase, we have lost every single time. We never meet our revenue projections, and everyone is saying that we're doing better or getting better, but we're getting worse. Let me tell you how. In 2023, we landed $4 million short of what we projected in the revenue. The actuals came out $4 million low. 2024, we went to $7 million short. So now we are $11 million in debt going forward because we were short again. In 2025, which you had stated that's in this budget right now, so far we are $30 million short, which means we have to make $5 million a week just to break even with what our proposed budget was. We are actually continuously inflating the revenues. We never hit those revenues because we want to play politics. And what we're doing is drowning ourselves deeper and deeper in the water. And we are going down, down, down. By the time we continue at this rate, because I went through this budget for about an hour, and I've already seen so much stuff in this that's fluff, that is fake revenue projections, that is going to put us out of reach again. As we continue with these audits, and I'm here to put it on the record because I want people to know that I said we're going to be close by the 2025 audit. When they come out in June, you said close to $1 billion in debt. And I need to know how we're planning on creating revenue streams that can reverse this, and how we plan on making money for the city to reverse this. We are spending almost $2 for every $1 we get. It is ridiculous at the rate that we are going. This budget needs to be looked at. It needs to be worked on hard and it needs to go down. I'm not here, and I say that in front, I see Madam Mayor there, I see other council people or whatever. I'm here to go along to get along. I'm here to do the work for the people that elected me to be here. And I know you are because we have these conversations all the time. So I'm not about going over the 2% tax cap. What I'm looking at doing and saying is when we know we have actuals, this, actual, you have a base to work from. You don't put out a budget of we need $200 million, then figure out how to fluff revenue to pretend that we're going to make that because we're not. We haven't made it in years. We're always short. So it is better to start from the actual and say, okay, we actually made $70 million. So let's start from the $70 million and everybody work within that $70 million and make that work. And you know what? If we go over and make $80 million, great. We got $10 million extra. We can start paying down some of these long-term debt liabilities, buy fire trucks or the garbage trucks that we need. But we can't continue doing it this way. I printed out something I'm going to leave with you also, so you can see it for yourself. Each one of these department breakdowns on how we're looking at stuff and how we went over every budget that we put out. And it's ridiculous. And not only that, I'm going to say for city council, which I put on the top, which is first, okay, city council did well. They spent less money. It's showing less money in the budget. Okay, so they have a 10% minus 10%. Everybody else has a big increase. Department of Highway and Maintenance, you guys got 121% increase coming. You look at the DPW shade trees, you have 205% increase coming. You have 105% increase on the architectural, architectural board and reviews. You don't say, hey, we made less money. Okay, we're not making money. So you know what? Let's raise the taxes. We're gonna need more money because we're getting tired of being a bank. I'm a taxpayer too, just like everybody else. I might be coming in as a councilman, but I am a taxpayer with property here. And I'm getting tired of paying this increase because you guys, not you, I'm not saying you when I say that, because the city does not know how to do a budget. That is the problem. Stop spending more money than we have. Spend within our needs. I'm not going to keep on going because I know we have a lot of people here. I'm going to leave this with you and some of the other things. And I know you said 96% of the tax revenues are coming in from these actuals. So far, I've only saw like 50 something percent coming in from those actuals of the budget.
You're right.
So
Okay, so
maybe
I don't know.
I might be
We-
wrong.
You are wrong, but you're not wrong because of what's in front of you. It appears as if there's also something that's missing from the actual line here, right? Because one, I'm looking on this document
Right, and
for
I'm looking
the
at this.
property taxes,
Right,
and I don't see that.
correct.
So
And that's
we
what I was
need-
going to ask you.
So that needs to, this document needs to be
Yeah,
updated.
and there's a lot of things we don't see because let me tell you, I don't see any of the lawsuit situations, even in contingency, or we even thinking about that. Because if Kayla Tennis wins, we're bankrupt.
They can't be in the budget, sir.
So I know it can't be in
So-
the budget, but
right,
I'm,
but so-
wait,
so all I'm
I
at-
know it can't, wait,
so-
wait, I'm not
so-
saying it's needs to be in the budget,
Right.
but it needs to be transparent to the community
It is.
that we are going to be bankrupt if they win.
Okay, it is.
Okay.
It is transparent. So
Where?
let me move. It's transparent in my reports to the public. It
Okay,
is constantly there.
it wasn't in the
As-
audit reports, but it's in a different report.
It's not, it wouldn't be in audit reports. It
Okay.
would be it's in the quarterly reports that I give, which talks about all of the liabilities. It is absolutely there, right? And in those reports, I also talk about beyond what is the budgeted, items that are in this budget. So I hear what you're saying. And again, as I said earlier, I've already done an analysis of the revenues and already given also recommendations to the administration and to the council about what those adjustments and those changes are. So I will look at what you have there as well. Now, let me get back to your first question. You and I have had this discussion before,
Correct.
right? The millions of dollars of debt related to the accrued liabilities for the staffing and basically their accrued time is all of the things that now are being reported as a part of our actual audits, which previously was not. We are not out of alignment with other municipalities as it pertains to having accrued liabilities. Those accrued liabilities will also be, that's a balance sheet item that also will be dealt with as we also deal with our fund balance and our return. Having said that, you are absolutely correct that we have to begin to, at least from the standpoint of what we see as accruing on an annual basis, to be able to budget for it, right? And so that has to be baked into as we begin to rebuild, one, our fund balance, two, also do our financial plan. The whole purpose around doing this multi-year financial plan was to get a base understanding of what are those elements and those things that we absolutely needed. So I'm not disagreeing with you that we have to begin to plan for it, but we don't have to begin to plan, we don't have to plan for the magnitude of what it is that you are actually saying. Because unless everybody retires, right, or dies.
And that's not
at the
going to
same
happen.
time, right.
And we talked
Then
about
we
long-term
will not
already.
that liability to come to fruition at one time. It is over periods of time
Correct.
in which we have to kind of
Correct.
plan for. So, thank you.
However, one last question. That current debt continues to grow each year as we miss the mark. So we are going further and further down. So are we paying attention to that? Because if it's 4 million one year, 7 million the next year, that's 11 million. With 30 million, I don't think we're going to hit that mark of 30 million by December 31st.
Part of it was that the years that you're talking about are also years in which the city did not also have a an appropriate, I'm gonna say it this way, an appropriate mechanism for also keeping track of accrued time. Right? That did not occur
Is it in place
until
now?
Yes, that did not occur until 2023. Right? So, yeah, what you're seeing is based upon estimates of what was there and information that is not as reliable based upon the timeframes, right? But we have, to your point, we do have a mechanism in place to manage that going forward, which was, again, the reason why we also implemented some new elements to the time and attendance program.
So let me ask you one question.
got that-
Hold on, this is the only question. Are we going to meet this revenue that I have here? That's it. That's the question. Are we going to meet it as present?
I've already voiced my concern about the revenue
It's
line.
just a yes or no.
I can't, I'm
You don't
telling
think so?
I'm telling you that there's areas in which I have concern, which I've communicated to the mayor, and that will need absolute clear management of if you're going to meet them. I've identified them in the presentation. I identified them in my conversations the other day. And the mayor also has provided what she believes that the administration will be able to do. Those questions, any more details about that, have to be asked on December 1st.
Okay, got
Okay?
it. Thank you.
Good evening. I appreciate the town hall. Axel Eberman, I'm a resident of Mount Vernon. I moved here 10 years ago. Ever since, we've been in a financial permit crisis, and I'm tired of it. And I'm tired of hearing the excuses. I know you're working hard. I know you're one of the most responsive people at City Hall, but with all the details and the minutia, I think we're losing the plot a little bit. And the plot is that I think Mount Vernon City Hall has forgotten what they're supposed to be doing, which is provide good government, good services that are needed at a minimum of cost to the taxpayers. And that has stopped a long, long time ago. We moved here 10 years ago, like a lot of people, because we didn't have a lot of money. We bought a house for $315,000, which had holes in the roof and was crumbling. Our taxes by now are pushing $20,000. I'm paying 6% of what that house cost me every year in property taxes. That is absurd. That is absolutely absurd. The taxes have gone up 40% the last 5 years, 6% now again. So with everything that you're saying, that all of our elected officials are saying, we should be on an austerity budget. I'm not seeing that at all. We're hiring one fluff position after the other. People, directors, yesterday they were interns, today they're making $130,000. You never see them again. We have documented instances from lawsuits of people in those positions who are no-shows. We know they're not here. And I'm not making this up because it's been documented. I have never seen an iota of accountability about that. And so we are discussing all these minutiae and whatsoever. The ingrained culture of cronyism and patronage that is sucking us dry is never addressed. It's like the mafia had an omerta. There are things you can talk about. And this is what I feel is going on. So let's bring the city back to what they're supposed to do. Police, fire, DPW. Provide the services to keep the lights on, things running, and everything else needs to be on the table. One thing that should be, the only thing that the city understands is to tax homeowners and residents. The business development is horrendous. Why? Because the mayors are always hiring their political campaign managers to be the business development managers, although they have no idea what they're doing. So what is the IDA doing? That should be the motor of this city. They're handing out tax exemption to low-income housing projects, which is an abuse of them. They're not supposed to be doing that at all. We have another one up right now. That will put a 30-year tax liability on the city. I'm 51 right now. I couldn't be a grandfather. 30 years ago, I was 21. I just gotten out of high school. This is how long you're putting Mount Vernon into debt with these absolute ill-conceived residential pilots. It is horrendous, and I'm going to leave it at that. Just because you mentioned the why and how it's not in the budget anymore. It's assessed at, I think, something $1 million from 2018. On paper, you want to sell it for $1.5 million on a 7-year-old evaluation. The city itself has it on its assessment rolls as market value of $5.6 million. Please don't give this away. There's much more value in that property. Thank you. But I really think we need to go back to the basics. All this minutia is bamboozled. We're drowning in these numbers, and the city has really forgotten what they're supposed to be doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Clarence Rums, elevator 450 Dunham. I had a question as far as your actuals and your projections of expected income. For instance, the income you anticipate on adult use cannabis tax. From 2024, your projection was 500,000, and you guys did less than half of that. You collected less than half, and it seems like we're doing the same thing as far as the projection and the income. Is there any factors of change to warrant that double jump?
Yeah, well, I believe that actually the cannabis was actually reduced in this one, at least. Yeah, even though there was anticipation that there was going to be another one that's going to come, but that was one of the areas in which also we flagged as being inconsistently declining. To the mayor's office and to the council for them. So I agree with you. I mean, we looked at it, but my understanding also is that there was also this anticipation that there's another one coming is what at least.
Oh, okay. So
Right, but we did reduce. If you notice, if you go through the budget, you will notice that there are some areas in which we did reduce, right? Based upon even some of the recommendations that came from our office, right? The other side of that was that there were also some areas that got increased based upon what the administration said the operational changes were going to be. My statement even to the mayor prior to this, and even tonight, was I'm cautious about those revenues because without actually knowing that they're going to be realized, if the plan is to achieve them, wonderful. But it has to be a very strict, monitored plan, and that the administration, meaning the department heads and them, have to make sure that they have the plan and the people in place in order to get it done.
And as far as like another line item, which is the converse, where Memorial failed, the anticipated revenue jump is very modest, and it seemed like that's our crown jewel. Why are we not making more from that?
Well, I can't answer the question as to why we're not making more. What I can answer the question to is why at least my office, and I think, you'd have to ask the mayor about her perspective on it, but was reluctant to jump that. Because if you go back a few years, it was at $800,000. And that year, they didn't get anywhere near that. And so it had to come down. But then last year or this year, they've done a lot better on it. So again, I think we modestly increased it because I don't want to be back in the same situation with a few years ago, right? So remember that for me, I'm trying the best to kind of balance the information that is coming over the last few years. And it is information that is fluctuating because of economic times. So we got to be careful. For me, my perspective is that we have to conservatively budget for revenues, and we have to liberally budget for expense. Anticipate that the expense is going to be more than what you really think it's going to be, right? Based upon what has happened. Because even if you look at the overtime budgets, right? Right. And we ought to be concerned about the overtime budgets going into 2026, because if we're bringing down the workforce, right, then that will mean that there has to be a very pointed coordination of staff allocation, assignment, and accountability to ensure that the work gets done in an efficient way, that it doesn't create more overtime.
And I can give you an example. Just today on my street, there were 6 workers, and 8 workers to fix a sidewalk, and 2 were working, the rest were talking. Amen. So, and neighbor after neighbor after neighbor, same horror story. It took us 8 months to get our permit approved to get our new roof, to get solar panels in a new roof. I have neighbor after neighbor after neighbor who trying to upgrade the house, trying to invest in Mount Vernon. And if you talk to contractors, if you talk to anybody in the real estate space, no one wants to deal with Mount Vernon because of the Department of Buildings. Everything's, it's just too slow. And back to the cannabis thing, this is an easy win. Why are we not making more from that? I mean, you go to New York, Yonkers, any place else, they're making millions from this. And we made $230,000. It seems ridiculous.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Just to follow up that one, if revenue was really a concern with Kayla Tennis Center, first of all, it wouldn't have been destroyed. Secondly, it wouldn't have been reduced from 6 top-notch courts down to 3. And it had 6 courts in a bubble, so it could go from 5 a.m. to midnight year-round. That would have generated a lot more revenue, but that's not why I'm here. But that's just my take on that. So thanks for mentioning Kayla. I got three basic words come to mind: practice, policy, and people. And one phrase that I may have missed tonight, but I didn't hear you say anything even related to the phrase best practice. Now, there's no way I would want your job. It's a very hard job, and I respect you for sitting there and delivering reports. I'm not here to quote numbers or anything, but from where I come as a former library trustee who really tried really hard to get a criminal forensic audit going, It's hard to do sometimes. But that would be part of best practice to really make sure you've got people here, boots on the ground, who know how to do a forensic audit and ask all the hard questions, pull back the curtain, find out what's really there. No matter who will be implicated or indicted or imprisoned, no matter what. Oh, fourth P, principle. Okay. Best practice. Preachers love lists. So best practice, principle, procedure, and policy. Thank you. So they're all kind of connected. I don't understand how we lost the 400,000 because your phone was connected to the bank account. Is that right?
That is incorrect.
It's incorrect. How, maybe you can address how that was lost and what best practices you would like to put in place to make sure it doesn't happen again. Because based on the information I had, it was first a smaller amount and then a bigger amount that was stolen. And the correction wasn't made to prevent the second hack. So that's one problem. But I really appreciate your passion for the city. But I don't see how someone like Benjamin Montgomery, who's a seasoned CPA, doesn't have this job instead of you. With all of his experience doing the fiscal audit in New York City, going through all their agencies, top to bottom, and getting $5 million back for the city. He offered his heart to help us get back on track. And I wonder if you would consider bringing him on board, at least as a consultant, and have him really dig in, because I really think he could be a great help. And then there's always the possibility for you just to simply step down and bring in a team. And I mean this with all respect. This is forget the numbers. Well, you won just last fall. Congratulations on your win. But it blows my mind that it just blows my mind. And it goes back to the machine, the friends and family. And really, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I've seen what goes on in the city as library trustee. I've seen behind the curtain, a couple of curtains, maybe not all of them. Oh, yes, I have. So we've all got our strengths, but a lot of us have been fired from jobs for much smaller mistakes and even unjustly. But to consider what's best for the city, I just implore you to pray and meditate on that for the good of all of us.
Thank you. So let me address a few things. So first of all, one is incorrect about the reason why the $400,000 was because it was connected to my phone. That is not accurate. It actually is because of the connection to the actual portal in the bank, the actual bank portal itself, and also cyber interference. As I've stated over and over again, that there were a number of things happening that day. Yes, there was a text that actually came to my phone, reference to that there was some fraudulent activity that was happening. It did not happen from my phone. In fact, when we attempted to then look into it through the bank portal, it was in the bank portal in which there was this actual cyber interference in that, because we also had a number of emails that were coming. I said this before, we had over 200 emails that was coming to my email box, trying to distract me from what actually was happening there, and also distract us from being able to contact our representatives. In fact, when we tried to do it even through the portal, we could not get through. it was because I actually then, my phone, actually sent an email to our representatives that then got them to be able to connect to us because then they got my message. It was being intercepted. So there's a number of things going on. So just want to make sure that we clear up.
Yeah, clear that up.
That it was not just one particular thing where I just gave out information and allowed for the money to be.
No, I'm not saying
No, I didn't say
that.
you did, but these are the things that.
That's a different
But
way of it
these, but
happening.
these are the things that I have heard, so I want to clear all of it up, right?
But why
Number
wouldn't
one.
Chase reimburse the
So-
money? Why do we have
It
to
is
go through
five-
insurance?
Again, it is cyber fraud, and so therefore, again, those are the things that are dealt with through the bank, through also, I said, I had this whole connection with the FBI on this issue, right?
Okay,
And I believe, and here's the thing, if I actually did something fraudulent, I hear you talking about negligence, and I get that. But if I had done something fraudulent, believe me, I believe that the FBI and the DA would be at my door already. That's number one. That's number one.
well, a
Number two-
statement
number
statement
two,
on
ma'am,
best
ma'am, let me
practices
finish.
would be
Ma'am, let
good.
me-
Just to finish that,
let
you
me-
could make a statement on that,
let
on
me-
best practices moving
I'm
forward.
moving to that if you allow me
Okay.
to do so.
Good.
Right? So having said that, then what we also did is to change also our now security measures in the office, right? And worked with the bank. We got extensive training on what we should do, should things thus come into the office, whether they come in by our emails or they come in, or we should look for certain things on the portal themselves. Chase themselves, even a month later, sent out a mass email because several of their clients became subjected to the very same thing that we did, right? We also put in some delays as it pertains to approvals to make sure that if something does get approved, it will then, one, notify several people that it has happened so we can make sure that it was something legitimate. And two, it would not immediately transfer, right? The other thing you mentioned was previous also loss, which was a loss that was related to an ACH back in 2022 that had absolutely nothing to do with the city or city employees or even our portal, connection to our portal. It had everything to do with the bank, which is why the bank reimbursed the entire amount, because it was a bank issue. So technically, this is the first incident that actually is related to the city and our city actual cyber, right, cyber violations, okay? Best practices. So number of things that we have done, which is what I attempted to do, right? Which was one, bringing people to actually do an assessment of where we are. Contract also competent financial professionals, accountants to work along with us and to be able to actually look underneath the hood. The reason why I did that was to make sure that we, one, train the staff that we have on the inside, to make sure that while we have also other experienced professionals to be able to look underneath and tell us exactly what was going on, what should we do, and to give us guidance on new practices. We talked about policies that were made and procedures that were made because we are now looking at those best practices. In addition to that, any travel that I have done in the last 3.5 years has been directly related to training in municipal finance. Directly. I've not gone on any trips anywhere that just been luxury. And they have been either to the Government Finance Officers Association, the New York State Finance Officers Association. I've completed over 75 hours of training specifically in municipal finance, and also not necessarily because while we're a small city, we're really a large city in the sense of how we operate, right? To make sure that we understand exactly what we're supposed to do in also municipal financing and in also multi-year planning, which is what then resulted in me actually saying to the council, we need to develop this plan. also saying to the council, we also need to move towards developing a capital fund plan that is separated from the operating plan, because the reason we're in the situation we are with many of our actual buildings and infrastructure is because we never appropriately planned for it, right? Or prepare for it. And so therefore, we are now moving towards all of those efforts to ensure that we are able to move the city forward financially. What was the other question that you had?
That pretty much covers it. I just, pray for wisdom for everyone making important decisions that impacts all of us, because we're all feeling the pain. And congratulations on your municipal finance training.
And what I hope, right, and what I
Mhm.
ask for is from residents, such as yourself and others, is contact me, invite me, come and talk. Sit down with me and let's talk about what you see as the problem and what you think may be some of the recommendations or strategic plans for us to move forward financially. I am not the administrator of the city. I am not the mayor, right? So those things are not in this office. I am the chief financial officer. So therefore, as it pertains to the finances of the city and any questions that anyone has or ideas, if there's professionals out there that you talked about Mr. Montgomery. Mr. Montgomery and I talked the day of the election. We even communicated after the election. He and I said we were going to get together and have a conversation, because that's not who I am as a professional, to just say that I'm not going to use expertise. In fact, I did it the very last time. It was Derrickson Lawrence who actually did the actual review of our policies and procedures and gave us the full report. And he ran for the position, right? So that's not who I am. But people want to cast this kind of impression as if I am not, one, capable, two, intelligent enough to know what I don't know, and to pull the right experienced people around me in order to make sure that what I may lack in actual knowledge and experience, that I have the right staff, consultants, and partners, inclusive of the constituents of this city, to be able to move this forward. I'm going to say the very same thing I said last night at another meeting. I am beholden to no one but the people of Mount Vernon. I am an independently elected person, and I make decisions based upon what I believe is in the best interest of this city. Am I infallible? Absolutely not, right? But what I won't do is allow people to insult my experience and my talent. I will not allow that to happen. So therefore, if people want to do that, they can go ahead, but I'm going to keep on doing as the former mayor of Rochester said, focus on the business of the city. That's
Amen.
what I'm going to do. And that's what I do every day. So I welcome any ideas you have. I welcome you to call my office, make a meeting. Let's talk about what it is. I also welcome the neighborhood associations to decide on the time for me to come. I just asked one thing. Let's be respectful. I asked one thing. Let's be constructive, right? Right? I am not that administrator. I am not that elected official that shuns the very people that elected me and said that they need me to work for them. So thank you so very much.
Well, we'll see how we move forward. And I do thank you for your candor.
Thank you.
Good luck with everything. Really.
Thank you.
My name is Stefan Enriquez. I'm a resident, and I thank you for tonight's presentation. It was useful.
Thank you.
And I have some questions. Did I understand you correctly to say that we, through budget balances of up to 2020, bond anticipation note debt and tax anticipation note debt, have an accrued $57 million debt, roughly?
$57
Million,
million debt.
right.
We have right now, if you look at the third quarter report, yes, it's about a 50, I think it might be 51, somewhere around about that as it pertains. So not a debt that we are carrying. That is separate from what it was that Councilman-elect Wallace was talking about. So, right, so when you look at it, it's about right now carrying bond anticipation notes, the health benefit payment that is due, and the Kayla tennis, right? It's 50,200,000.
Okay, but that doesn't include the tax anticipation notes of 6 million, correct?
The tax anticipation notes are short-term for the year. They get paid back at the end of
But
the
they're
year.
debt.
Yes.
So I was just asking, based on the figures that you presented tonight, whether I understood correctly.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, have you made any estimates of what the debt accruals will be once you finish the preparation of the audited financial statements, for which you're going to have another 5 fiscal years? Do you have any sense of what the cumulative city debt total will be?
We do not at this time, which is a part of the process of the audit process as we're working through it.
Okay, and on your website, you have a schedule, but I don't think it goes through the entire 5 years of fiscal periods for which audited financial statement.
For completing audits,
Yes.
it might need to be updated because the 2020 audit took extremely more time to complete than what originally had been allotted. And a lot of that had to deal with not the city's data, but agencies' data that actually folds into the city. So the previous Charter Revision Commission put in a requirement for the Comptroller to have to make sure that we're reporting on not only the city, but agencies as well. And at least one of those agencies, because of the way in which money is actually given to the city, actually has this inter-fund connection to it. And then there was also some federal regulations. And so there was a lot of challenge around it based upon what was happening in 2020 with my predecessor in funds coming in and going out. And so that caused us to have that audit took 9 months to get done, which is outrageous, but it took that long period. So it changed the configuration of when we are going to complete or not. So we'll update the schedule based upon the fact that it's probably outdated.
As you go forward, would you be open to putting on your website any responses you've provided to the state controller's office in respect to how you will improve financial controls and record management for the city?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Okay, great. And would it be possible to get a breakdown by city agency of deficits contributing to the overall budget deficit that might also be shared with the people of the city?
Okay, we can, when you say deficits, are we talking about the lack of revenues that are coming in?
No, I'm simply talking about in terms of the adopted budget, okay, what percentage is of debt is allocated to
Related to
each
the expenses.
agency? Right.
Because, okay, so there's a few things that we are doing, also we're moving towards. The way that the budget actually was designed before, there was no identifier as to revenues as to which department actually was responsible for revenues.
Mhm.
We've changed that kind of this year by trying to identify exactly what department is responsible for that. As it pertains to the expenditures, right? We can reconfigure at least, I think, once a year or twice a year to reconfigure the report so that it also shows departmentally what the actual variance may be in the budget. Right now, it's by budget line item. So if I'm hearing you correctly, what you're asking for is to be able to know everything belonging to DPW, right?
Right,
What is the overall deficit or surplus
right,
for that department, right?
right.
Okay, got it.
And last question, what's your assessment of the risk of the city of Mount Vernon being subject to a financial control board?
We are definitely at risk of that. I think we've been at risk for some time. Part of the problem has been, because I even looked into it earlier on in my administration, is that they actually, one of the requirements for them to actually come in and to do that was to kind of have up-to-date audits, which is why we've been moving to try to get up-to-date audits. What probably would advance that is if we do not change the trajectory of our actual spending, right, over our revenues in the next year or two, it will put us in a place where, yeah, the question is that we would be at a place where we'd have to consider, are we really a city that needs to be declaring bankruptcy?
I appreciate the answer. That's a relatively short window. And I would also acknowledge, I understand you've been cleaning out some very dirty stables. And, you know, I'm sure you've had to configure a lot of data and find it. So
Yes, sir.
good luck.
Thank you.
Good evening, Corrine Bell, 19-year Mount Vernon city resident. And I guess I have a couple of questions and/or points that I want to make. First and foremost, looking through the review of the 59-page document, it's a little confusing. I'm a finance professional. I know how to kind of navigate my way around it, but in certain parts of it, you're talking about budget proposed revised, which is, I guess, all budget estimates. We're going back to 2022. To me, that's irrelevant. When you're talking about prior years, we care about the actuals. What did we actually spend? Unless you're going to give us context of what the actual versus the budget is versus 23, 24, then to me, it doesn't make sense. There are other parts of I think the first page, you're looking at proposed. We go down into the expenses. We're talking about proposed, revised budget, amended. Then we get down to the revenue. It's proposed, it's revised, it's actual, it's year-to-date spend.
I'm
It's
sorry, which document are you? Just
the 59-page document that, I mean, it's a 2025 budget, hold on.
the budget document you mean?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
The
The
bu-
one that had all, because there's like appropriations on there, there's estimates. It's a very lengthy document. So just
You're
look,
talking about the budget document?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
yes.
Okay.
So just looking at it, and as a taxpayer, again, I like to apply by the rule of keep it simple, stupid. Like just keep it as simple as possible, streamline it. These are not people, most of us are not finance people who understand to go and look, this number ties to this number on page 30. I need to jump back to page 2 to align it all together. It's a little bit hard to read, in my opinion. So that was one of the takeaways that I wanted to bring up. Number 2, I think it was brought up by a gentleman earlier today that we were talking about liability and debt, which I know that's on the balance sheet and cash flow. And what we're really talking about is probably more of an income statement type of thing. So I don't know if it could be presented that we look at the budget in the 3-statement view, which is income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow. So it kind of will address some of the questions that we had. What is our full liability? What are our assets that are on the books? I don't think we actually know that as a community, and I think that's helpful information. So I think this was alluded to earlier today is one of the things that I noticed is that our revenues do seem out of whack, and it doesn't make sense to me. And just doing quick math on some of these things, it doesn't pass the sniff test. And you being the chief financial officer, you're looking at it, you know these numbers in and out, you probably see numbers in your head. So if it doesn't pass the sniff test to you, it most certainly would not pass the sniff test to us. So specifically, I just wrote down a few of the budget items that did not make sense to me, like the sewer rent, which is item 2120, 26 budget, we have $2 million, 25 budget, we have 1.5, 25 actual, there's $0 reported. Tax adult use of cannabis, somebody brought this up, a line 1116 or department, I'm not sure what it is. 26 budget, I think it's 500K, 25 budget, 600K, actuals through 1110, which is approximately 45 weeks, $223,000 received. If you take an average of that, about 300K. I'll just go through some of the larger ones. The mortgage tax, again, 26 budget, $1.5 million, 25 budget, $1.5 million, 25 actual, $776,000. And now it's just some of the bigger ones. What my concern is, if this number is a fluff, it just actually puts us more and more into the hole because our revenues will never meet our expenditures. And being that you are the chief financial officer, we will never dig our way out of debt with revenue. As a finance professional, I do know it is easier to cut expense. It is not pretty, it is ugly. I get it. I do it all the time. I manage 4 plants. So I definitely get where you're coming from and the challenges that we're within. But I think to show good faith to see that we are doing the right thing, that we are being good financial stewards of our money, that we have to show more of this in terms of, I think it was mentioned that 85 to 88% of our spend in this city goes directly to salaries and to people is a troubling point. And no one has talked about what does it take to right-size the city. I think I've mentioned this in the past, maybe last year. How many people do we actually have working here, full-time and part-time? Do we need that? They've talked about people not showing up to work. I don't know if things are not getting done because people are not here. We don't have the right people in place. We don't have the right technologies and tools so people can do their job a lot more effectively. But let's figure out what it takes to right-size this city today. In this case, the city loves to compare itself to some of our neighbors. New Rochelle and Yonkers comes up a lot. And we compare ourselves to them when it is convenient, but not when it's correct, right? We pick and choose about what we want to compare ourselves to our neighboring cities, but they are larger than us, their tax base is larger than us, and yet still we have some of the same number of headcount from what I at least last recall. And it doesn't pass the sniff test for me. I think I had a few more points. We talked about the fund balance. So my question to you is that, how do you go about getting ourselves out of that? Because we're showing the expenses going up, at least when I looked at it quickly, just the overall budget, $151 million to $156 million. How do we get to funding that and correcting that if the budget keeps going up and we're not making significant cuts to take that down? Okay. I think I have other questions, but I know I said a lot.
So, no, you did. And so let me respond to it all. So first of all, I agree wholeheartedly about the revenues. And I have articulated that to the mayor, to the council.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't start just a month ago,
I agree.
right? It started several months ago at least, right? Even in my opening here today, I identified pretty much all of the same revenue lines that you identified as of concern for me as to what we are projecting, right? Because for me, as we look at the numbers across the several years, right, I do not see how we're going to get to the number that now is being projected. The mayor and the administration also has countered by saying that there are operational changes that will occur to ensure that those revenues are realized. I still say, to me, we need to be very, very conservative around that, right? And we need to really right-size it as best as we can, right?
If you don't have a
And-
document, it should not be put into the budget.
But-
Like if you don't have anything hard written that says that I got it and this is the day it's getting here, it should be a 0.
Listen, I hear, all right, I hear what you're saying, right?
Mhm.
So again, my role as the chief financial officer, right, is to provide the guidance and the advice, right, around what I see as the numbers, which I did. When we first looked at it, the mayor could attest that our recommendation was reduce the revenues by $2 million.
Mhm.
And here's the areas, right, in which they need to be reduced, right? Over the course of several weeks, we actually worked with the mayor and the council on how do you now not only adjust the revenues, but also adjust the expenditures, right? And that's how we ended up getting to the 32, 34 people that actually got written out of the budget. But again, I'm saying that in order for us to have a significant impact upon where we are, we're going to absolutely have to look at the staffing, the workforce, right? In addition to right-sizing the revenue in order to get there.
Okay, and that's fair. I think you brought up a point about the insurance. In this day and age, every person should pay their fair share of insurance. We all do. I think that is a non-starter. I think as a resident, we are all taxpayers here. I just had a surgery that cost about $100,000 and I paid a significant amount out of my own pocket. I think it's unfair to ask residents for an increase, but there are people who work in the city, and I get it. We all don't make the same amount of money, but everybody should be able to contribute their share. It's only right and it's only fair. And again, it shows good faith to the community that I'm going to do my part as you're an elected official or those who are employed by the city. And I think that anyone that says differently, I have to give them the side eye on that, honestly. Okay. I think I had something else, but I can't remember what it is, but thank you for that. I mean, I definitely know that it takes a lot of work to put all of this together, but as we're talking about, like if we're 2 years out from financial distress, I won't even call it, we're in distress now, like financial, like we just can't come back from, it has to start today, right? It has to start in 2026 to say that this is where there's no incidental spending. If it is not an emergency, you don't go anywhere. During the pandemic, I worked for a corporation that was just like, unless you are dying, or I mean, they didn't say that, but it was like, it had to be such an acute need that you had to travel, that it was approved. It was understood that there was just certain things you couldn't afford it, you stayed home. If it was your own personal money and you couldn't afford to go somewhere, you wouldn't go. You would stay home. And that's not to knock on anyone about, not that there's training and development that's not needed, but I think we have to figure out how to do that differently, especially within these times. Can we delay it? Can we prolong it? And I think there are policies and procedures that we can probably put in that would, what's the word I'm looking for? That would lead to help support all of that. So that's my questions and comments.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you on that. I think I answered your questions, right?
Hi, a homeowner at 623 Hanover Place. I'm also a cybersecurity engineer. Earlier you spoke about a security incident. What corrective action plans have been put in place? Was there a security audit, an independent security audit? And what changes have been made to avoid you from going through a breach again?
Yeah. So yes, there was a audit that actually was done of the security of the current security system. as well as we also changed the levels of cyber security. We also internally, as well as also the bank themselves, also through their portal, also made some adjustments because they also had some additional kinds of things that are happening, not just with us, just within their own portal. Good portion of it was also within their own portal as it connected also to ours. So we've got a number of things that have happened.
And you can't control.
I
the
can't
bank's
control that.
Security, but you can control the Mount Vernon City security.
And that's what
So what corrective actions plans were put in place
we,
after this breach?
yes, again, for us, internally, right, with our IT department, we actually then increased our actual security. I cannot tell you specifically what was done because I'm not an IT person. So you would
Was
have
there
to,
an external audit being done? People brought in independently to tell you where you have security holes and what corrective action
Not
plans
that I
you
know
put
of.
that in place?
Not
to
that I
avoid
know
it from
of.
happening again?
Not that I know of. I would have to ask the IT about it. We reported it to them. We also reported it to our insurance company, and what they directed to happen is what we follow whatever plan it was that they actually directed for us to happen. So I can't tell you about
That is
internal.
very vital information
Okay.
that the people of Mount Vernon that pay in taxes should be aware of.
No problem.
And that should also be in the budget, quite frankly. Protecting money that hardworking people are putting into the city needs to be protected at all costs. And there are a lot of security measures you can put in place. Because I heard you for your first line of defense, oh, it wasn't me. But the number one vulnerable area in the IT world is the people sitting at the desk. It's very easy to trick people into giving up their passwords and, passing all security measures. They don't have to come in. Most of the time is the computer or the person that's giving the information, sharing the information unknowingly most of the time. So security awareness, corrective action plans, and external audit to make sure you have the right people in place to protect money that's in the city of Mount Vernon is vital. And that needs to be in the budget also, because this is vital service to avoid you from going through another security breach. So another thing, has there been an assessment of where you can cut costs in your personnel that can be automated? Because there are a lot of jobs that are quite frankly being done manually that can be automated. Well, I see the building department portal and all that is a huge upgrade for that, but still they're still inefficient where they're taking like 8-9 months to issue permits to the point where plumbers, electricians, contractors don't want to work with homeowners in Mount Vernon because you guys take way too much time to issue permits. So we're losing vital money and revenue because of the inefficiency of city departments. And I know there's work done already, but there's still a lot of work to do at that aspect.
So I will definitely have conversations with our IT department about the items that you have outlined here today. Let me just correct something. I didn't give an offense, the defense that it wasn't me. I said that the reality of it is that all that was happening with it, and we realized that there's a number of things happening. But what I also said is that what we also did was to make sure that we then had the appropriate training and retraining to be able to know what we also needed to be looking out for, what the right protocols were. We also changed internally in our internal controls, our own procedures to heighten the level of security from a financial standpoint, as it pertains to the cyber, right, security pieces, I really defer that to the IT department, but you've brought up some things that I will then mention to them to make sure that we actually are doing.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Thomas Keller. We've lost a third of our audience. It serves me right. I waited to the end to speak. But anyway, you know, the elected officials are not going to like what I'm going to say. You were in for almost 4 years. The mayor's been in for 6 years, but not the first 2 years, because Deborah Reynolds was the controller then and there were problems. But you've served together for 4 years. 3 people on the city council, Petite, Danielle Brown, Caitlin Gleason, have served for 4 years. It seems every year with these town hall meetings, more and more new information pops up, and it's always a liability. Do we mean to say that we owe the IRS $2 million? Are these payroll taxes? Social Security employer portion was not paid. Medicare was not paid. Disability was not paid. The New York State Health Department, which in the past was the insurer, 3 years we owe them, 3 or 4 years. I would think the New York State Health Department would offset the $7 million of aid that the city gets from the state. You know, budget versus actual. I'm trying to do this from memory, but about half the revenues come in through property taxes, half comes in through other things, New York State sales tax, parking fees, whatever. If I remember, property taxes are at 71 million for 9 months. So you're not going to collect very much more because it's front-ended. You get taxes in January, you pay them in July. Revenues, I'm assuming they're dispersed pretty equally. So 75 million a year, divide by 12, it's about 6 million. So for 3 months, October, November, December, what's that, 18 or 20 million revenues? You've spent 119, 40, 40, 40, and 40 is 160. That's 5 million more than what's budgeted for this year. Are we going to have a cash flow problem between now and the end of the year? I guess with vendors, you can delay payment to them until January, but payroll you can't. Oh, you could, but you have a strike occurring. All right. The audit schedule. I'm doing this from memory, but it seems the last year or two, the audit schedule has been changed. It's been pushed further out. I don't know, like last year, we're supposed to be 22, 23 was supposed to be done by the end of this year. 24, 25. Well, maybe not 25 because we were in, it was a year ago. But it seems like it's getting pushed out. Why is this? We have Munns Davies. I mean, they've been auditing the school district and the city for God knows how long. They got to be pretty familiar with the city. I know the school district has changed a few years ago. They don't no longer use Munns Davies. So I talked about the TANs. Okay, you mentioned that in settling with some of the unions, if you settled all at once in 24, there'd be a huge tax increase either for 24 or 25. And you wouldn't want that. By spreading it out over several years, it lessened the burden on the taxpayer. But I'm going to get cynical. You were up for election this year. 3 city council people were up for election. Does anybody recall 1993 here? Peter Pachillo was the controller. Ron Blackwood was the mayor. Ron DiCarlo and, I don't know, Thompson or Pretlow, I can't remember all the others. But there was a 24% tax increase. 24%. Maureen Walker beat Peter Pachillo. Ron Blackwood didn't run for re-election in 95, if I recall. Let's see, Lyndon Williams was elected city council. I think DiCarlo was one of the ones that lost, was up. So if you had paid this all out in 24, and you had a 10 or 15, 20% tax increase, all of you people that ran this year would have lost, I would think. So you couldn't afford to do that. Let's see, what else do I have here? Oh, yeah. The lady that just left, she's a financial professional, talking about every employee should pay part of their health plan. Of course they should. And I really don't know how much the city, police, and fire paid towards that. I don't know if you remember, Rob Astorino imposed a 20% increase on the district attorney's office. Janet DeFiore was a district attorney, and they didn't pay for any of their health insurance. And Rob, because district attorney is under the county budget. And so he proposed this. It went through. Janet DeFiore said, "Oh, we're going to lose all sorts of people from the district attorney's office because now they're going to get a wage cut. They're going to have to pay for some of their health insurance." I don't think anybody left, or if they did, it was 2 or 3 people. I'm sure they weren't missed. So when the city was negotiating with the unions for years in arrears that the city owed them money, that was a perfect opportunity for leverage to say, yeah, we're going to grant you X, Y, and Z, but we want you to pay. This is CSEA, Teamsters, the 100 or so people. By the way, I don't know how many people are non-union, but Maureen Walker told me a number of years ago there are about 100 non-union people and 500 or 600 union people amongst the 4 unions. We're not going to agree for that back pay unless you agree to have your employees agree to pay a portion of their health care costs, and not a token amount, but start with something. And if the 100 or so non-union employees don't want to pay, they can leave. It's an abomination that in this day and age, they're not paying. Thanks very much for all the time. And when we have these Board of Estimate and City Council hearings on the budget, people should be given at least 5 minutes. Or they should be able, if they don't use the 5 minutes, give their time to someone else. Thanks very much for being so accommodating and so generous with your time tonight. And I have to talk to you about these tax liens, but now is not the time to do it, but we'll talk in the future. Thank you.
All right, so Mr. Keller, let me respond to a few things that you actually said. So, the cash flow of the city does not operate the way in which you kind of laid it out. One, when it comes to the taxes do come in 2 major tranches, right? As
Right.
we all know. And so, yeah, the majority of those things do get paid according to the schedule. But there are still a number of taxpayers who actually do pay their taxes, after those dates. So there's some money that does come in. When you look at the sales tax revenue that does come in every month, and it comes in 2 cycles every month, but that fluctuates based upon the sales. The department revenues, so you take just the tax revenue and then take the rest of the revenue and equally divide it up over the months and say that that's what you anticipate, $6 million coming in every month. Some months it may be 6, some months it may be 9, some months it may be 3, and maybe 2, depending upon the flow of all of those other revenues that come in that don't come in either one on a monthly scheduled basis. What compounds the problem with the cash flow is that, one, in the years of even like Maureen's years of being comptroller, there was a fund balance. So what would happen is that the fund balance itself would just be able to help to front the actual expenditure of those things that are not actually budgeted for, such as advance payments for grants, things of that sort, lawsuits that come up that are not connected, that are not known, right? along the way. So that's how it would flow. Unfortunately, we don't have that luxury, so therefore it creates this challenge for us in being able to kind of manage it. So wanted to make sure I give a clear understanding of what happens as it pertains to cash flow scheduling. Now, audit scheduling. So you're correct. We put out an audit schedule and we periodically update that audit schedule based upon the completion of the audits. One, we cannot do multiple audits at the same time, so therefore we have to wait for one audit to finish in order to move to the next. Because we are also not relying upon just the city's financials, the city operation fund financials, but we are also dependent upon the water board also fund and them completing their audits. We are also relying upon the completion of the URA and their audits because there are inter-fund connectivities between the operation budget and those funds and responsibilities that we have, that in order for us to also complete what is known as the single audit to the federal government. Because if there are any grants that come in to the city or any of its agencies that is beyond $750,000, it then requires that there is a single audit that ends up going to the federal government. So some of the delays, a good portion of the delays, is the coordination of completing all of these audits and making sure that we have all of the actual information, the trial balances completed and all of those things, and for them to be able to do whatever testing that they need to do on the items in order to complete the audits. So as I stated earlier, the 2020 audit took an exorbitant amount of time. And the reason why it took an exorbitant amount of time was because 2020, late 2019 and early 2020 were the years in which there was a lot of money that was being returned back to the federal government, not in its totality, but in parts. Whereas though the comptroller at the time was also picking and choosing the things that they were going to pay and keep and move back. So there was a lot of reconciliation that needed to be done. Coupled with that is that also there were not chief accountants that were in the office at the time, also making sure that the financial information was in the financial system. So recreating or creating the actual financial records for those things also took time for those years. 2020, 2021 are the most horrendous years with the financial records of this city, right? Not only here, but also in also in connection to URA because of the money and the funds that had been going back and forth, some that paid, some that was not paid. So as a result, based upon the fact that our audits, once our audits get to a place of completion, is then when we can move to the next one and project when the audits after that will then be completed. So yes, that schedule is going to fluctuate. That schedule is going to change. And believe me, as people have said, not having been a trained, I guess, accountant, I have learned a lot about what this means. And I have been frustrated by it too. And our auditors will tell you that I've been riding them very hard about making sure that we get these things done as quickly as possible, right? In order to complete them. In addition to that, we also cannot complete our AFRs because some people have also said, well, why don't you at least complete the AFRs? Well, they will not allow us to complete the annual financial report with the state comptroller's office until we complete 1 year. They don't even open up the subsequent year until that first year is done. They also state that if we do that and we do it ahead of time and we don't do it with audited reports, then what it will require of us is to then ask them to reopen something that they've already closed and cause more problems, not only for us, but for them. So therefore, we have to simultaneously complete the annual audit and the AFR, which is why this is a huge coordination. And I think that in 3.75 of a year, completing 5 audits, this financial administration has done well in getting those done. So what I want to make sure that we understand is that from the standpoint of my office, right, which I am the city's comptroller, I am governed also by municipal law, right? So the reason why we also had some huge debts around labor issues is because there was overtime that was actually achieved by workers in DPW, in which, I'm going to say it this way, the city decided that they weren't going to properly pay it. And because the city decided they weren't going to properly pay it at the time, we ended up in a legal matter and a lawsuit around it, because the law says that if someone works it, you have to pay them for the time, right? So if, for example, somebody said, well, why don't you just not pay people when their overtime line has expended? Because the law says I cannot do that. The law says I have to pay them. But then what I have to do also is to notify the leadership of the city, whether it is the mayor, the department heads, or it is the council, that these budgets are overrun and that they must do a budget transfer immediately. All right, on it. Also, when I also see that there is less revenue coming into the city and expenditures are even whole in line based upon the budget, as the chief financial officer, I do not have the authority to tell people, stop. I don't have the authority to stop them. I have the authority to send a letter to the council, to the mayor, to the departments with directives around spending. If they do the spending and the bill comes into the office, right, I am obligated to do the very best that I can to pay the bill, which is what we do, right? On a daily basis. Because what we don't want to happen, and I'm trying not to avoid, but we get very dangerously close to it based upon the cash flow, is to be in a situation of like when I came in, where we had over $10 million of outstanding vendor debt because it had not been paid, right? So these are parts of the responsibilities and duties of my office, but it's difficult to often manage, again, if there's not strict compliance to what it is that we need to do, right? So I just need to make sure that I make it clear about how it financially kind of operates, because people think that the way in which municipal finance works is the same way corporate finance works or not-for-profit finance works. It does not. One, we are also on a modified accrual system, right? So there's certain things that actually can be paid over into a new year, right? There are certain things like prescriptions and software that we can prepay, but the majority of things we cannot prepay, right? And if there is not an actual signed contract, if there is not a PO that has been signed for something, or the service has not been completed or the project received within a particular budget year, anything that is done that is outside of that is then moved over into the following fiscal year. So there's a lot of nuancing here that I want to make sure that the public understands, right, what is happening. My reports are transparent. My reports give you the update on the changes that occur from even quarter to quarter. So yes, you are going to see that one report is going to say we are at $34 million of liability, and then the next report may say that there is $50 million of liability, because what happened between the 2 quarters is that there was absolutely some sort of settlement or some sort of liability, some legal action or something that may have come in, or that there was something that then came to our attention that we did not know. You brought one of them up. We had no clue that there was a 2019 bill owed to the IRS until the IRS sent us a notice to tell us that had been done. And so therefore now, in order for us, and the bill at the time was $4 million. What we did is negotiate with them, my office, me and the payroll administrator, on negotiated with them that we not pay those penalties and that we just paid the actual tax amount that was due, right? These are the things that are happening because every time I think I got all that is owed, something else creeps its way in and I find out that it is due, right? I am hoping that we are now finally at a place where that is not happening. But what I am telling the present administration to do is to make sure that they better manage, become a little bit more efficient. We train our workers because we have entirely too many accidents that are occurring around the city for use of vehicles, right? And so now we're mandating people to now go to certain trainings for operating vehicles, operating equipment, and things of that sort. So these are all new things that have been implemented. In addition to that, also now monitoring, making sure that we monitor with the DMV their driver license records, because we find that people oftentimes get suspensions and we don't know, and then there's an accident and we find out that well, we got an employee that did not have actual active license, and it increases our liability. So from the standpoint of liability, also as one of the liability, the risk management officers for the city, there are a number of measures that we have taken with our insurance company. And so just like the young lady who came before about the cyber insurance and cyber security, I take it all in and I then go and research to make sure that we increase and improve our measures to try to minimize what is the exposure to the city. So thank you very much for your comments. I will continue to do what I can do. Any other suggestions that you have, you know where my office is.
Yeah, just, you said that you send emails or talk to department heads to conduct themselves frugally, if you will, but they don't report to you. You got to make that point to this lady here, the mayor, the chief executive officer.
Mr.
To do that.
Mr. Keller, the mayor was included in my statement, the mayor and the departments. I did not exclude her. And the mayor also has been responsive, right, to it. I mean, again, administration is administration, financial administration is financial administration. We have improved, we are improving, and we need to take further action. I get it, I hear you. But I don't want you to think that we just idly sitting by doing nothing, because that's not, to be far from the truth.
And
Okay?
include the city council
Right.
president, since that person is
City
part
council
of the
president.
board of estimate.
City council president is always included. All right, yes, next.
Oh, boy.
All right, do we have just two more? Want to make sure, okay.
I make mine very brief. Raymond Copeland, 236 Bedford Avenue. I'm so glad that I attend this meeting because I sit here quietly, listening, and a lot of the things that I heard I learned a lot tonight on the positive side of how the city operates. Because I know for myself, it's difficult to operate a household. So imagine the seat that you sit in and protecting the whole city. And I like the way you said it when you said that you are really obligated to the city. I appreciate hearing that. I hear it from a city perspective, and I hear it from a church perspective as well as the minister. I know it's maybe difficult to separate the two, but you're a man that wears a lot of hats. So I feel much better since I've been sitting here learning. When I came in with it, my hat was like this high, but now I got it on because I listened, and that's how you learn by listening. So I going to say to you, I wish you the best of luck, to you and the mayor. It's not an easy position to sit in. It's not a seat that perhaps most of us could sit there like you and the mayor and other staff are doing. But there is a saying that, well, no matter what type of business you have, your business is no better than the people that work for you because they represent you. And when I heard that, and I have observed the police department, I think we do more hiring than any other state or town with hiring new officers over and over and over. And I always wondered, what can we do to keep these officers that we train and pay to remain in Mount Vernon? And it might be a good idea if we speak to the union, because sometimes the union has more power than you do when it comes to negotiating. If there was some type of way you could speak to the unions where when we hire these new officers and DPW, et cetera, they have to stay there a certain amount of time in order to get a raise. And you must prove that you are a good officer. I observe a lot of things that take place in the city. I've been here for 65 years, and I've seen a lot of things that went down. I've seen a lot of things that has been for the better. And I would like there are a lot of homeowners that would like to invest money into their home, but they hesitate to do it because their taxes go up. And I think it's not fair if you want to fix up your home that you'll be penalized by your taxes going up. Now, as an ex-DPW deputy commissioner, I'm wishing you the best, because you and I have worked together on different projects when you was in recreation. And when Mayor Davis gave me this job as deputy commissioner for DPW, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. Little did I know that I was a building contractor for 60 years, but I came into DPW wanting to make changes. It was very difficult. And I wish you the best in your changes.
Thank you, Mr. Copeland. I think we have a lovely lady behind you that needs to have something to say. Thank you, Mr. Copeland.
I feel sorry for you.
Thank you, Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Let the lady come behind you, Mr. Copeland. We'll talk later. Thank you, sir.
Okay,
I appreciate you.
Okay, I will look forward to talking to you in your office.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
I want to say, akin to him, that I very much appreciate your meeting tonight and the efforts that you have placed. Part of the first Charter Commission that required the audits, I understand the difficulty that you have with trying to get the books in order and trying to understand. I've seen the work that's gone into budget work. It's truly a very difficult thing. I know nobody wants to pay more taxes. I don't want to pay more taxes, but I don't want less services either. So you either get more revenue, which could be taxes, or you lose services. And I think we all need to be aware of that when we do it. I hear people saying things like no-show jobs. I'd like to know who those are from the people that are saying that. Let's air it out and get it straight. If it exists, if you don't have that data, let's stop eating ourselves from the inside out. I was told by someone today that these attacks bother me more than they do some of the people that they're directed at. That's true. I do not like these attacks on our city. and on our elected leadership. The majority of the community has spoken. We have placed our faith and trust in you and in our other elected officials. It's a complex issue. We need to have faith. We can bring our complaints, thoughts, and ideas, but then ultimately it's up to you to make it work. So I appreciate that effort very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, I want to thank everyone for being here this evening. Want to thank, of course, the finance staff who was here in support, as well as, of course, our corporation councils here and our mayor, who also is here as well. I hear all of the challenges and I take them seriously. I don't take them lightly. Know that this work is not easy. There's no one size fits all to this. And I welcome constructive, positive dialogue with the residents, the constituents of this city, as well as also bringing in experts that also are able to assist and assist us in the efforts that we are making. We've made some major strides. We are still in a very fiscal stress, position, of course. And having said that, we have to work deliberately moving forward. Even with this proposed budget as we have as it has been presented, and as we begin to look at what are some of the areas in which could be changed in the budget. Recognizing, of course, that may very well mean that there are some staffing changes, but that also may very well mean that there's also that there are some service changes to it. And I just need to make sure that we all understand what that reality is as it pertains to the revenues. Again, we are constantly looking at those. I mean, I think, the mayor knows what my concerns are. I understand what her plan of action is around those. And so again, we have to be deliberate about our decisions on that. We must be conservative in our revenue projections as we also look at ways to cut our expenditures. And here's the reality of it, right? We have got to come to some agreement as to what the budget will be and get the budget adopted. That does not mean that we should just rush to adopt the budget. However, in order for us to operate come January, because while we are doing a TAN is not going to allow us to be able to just continue to operate for weeks at a time. We cannot, I'm gonna be clear, we cannot afford to have a budget that is not adopted in this month. And so whatever work we have to do to right-size it, to get it, well, whatever that may mean, I'm committed to doing, and I'm sure that my colleagues are committed to doing it. And we need to be able to hear from the public about it and then get it done. So having said that, thank you also very much for this town hall meeting and for your input. Know that the presentation will be on the website tomorrow, as well as the third quarterly report will be on the website. Also note that available in our office is also the tax lien list for the December 16 tax lien. So thank you. Have a great night.